there everybody, hope there's some people that can join me. I'm just going to fiddle around a bit and get the link up on my Liz Cornell page, so bear with me. Give you a chance to grab yourself a hot chocolate or a gin, as in my case. I shall just do some fiddling around. Let's see if I can Hi Joe and Barbara, thanks for joining me. Trying to work out how to share my link. If anybody's more technically minded than me, if you don't mind doing that for me, that would be fantastic. Right, okay, I'm going to give up on that. So thanks everybody for joining me. I hope you're sitting comfortably. If you are, then I shall begin. Okay, Yule Tales Part 1. Traditionally, in the Northern Hemisphere, the celebration of Yule starts on the 21st of December, which is also the winter solstice. In days gone by, Yule traditionally lasted 12 days. Obviously the solstice is the shortest day and the longest night, marking the point at which the wheel turns and the days get longer and lighter from then on in. Being the longest night, there's pagan tradition of gathering together around a fire to tell stories, and this tradition still persists to this day. Having played host to many different incomers, British folklore is rich with tales from Scandinavia, Germany, Italy, and even as far as Russia. Many of these tales have become interwoven with the modern celebration of Christian festival of Christmas, which a lot of people know about, the story about Father Christmas and how he became red, how he started off as Saint Nick, and a lot of people will have heard about Krampus. Krampus Day was 3 days ago, I think it was, but I'm not going to touch on those. The first thing I'm going to talk about is a story that I tried to find the origin of, but could only find the fact that it's from Germany. The Venerable Bede, a monk and a scholar from the 8th century, writes of a festival called Modernacht, or Mother's Night, that was celebrated on the 25th of December. Small coincidence there, you think? Bede also talks about Yule, and it may well be that this story combines both of these celebrations. So a very long time ago, there was a beautiful woman, whose son called Gaia, who lived on a blue and green island. Although she had many friends on the island, fairies, trees, flowers and animals, she was the only person who lived there. She wanted to share her friends and secrets with the people like her, so she began to give birth. Every month when the moon hid her light, she gave birth. For the first 6 months, she gave birth to daughters who were dark of hair, eyes and skin. For the second 6 months, her daughters were born with fair hair and skin and blue eyes. On the 13th moon of every year, in the month we now call May, she gave birth to a magical and sacred oak. As the wheel turned, the years slipped by. Many, many daughters were born, and more oaks too. The daughters played with the animals, climbed in the boughs of the oak trees, and gathered fruit and flowers with the fairies. One day, the firstborn daughter gave birth herself. To mark this occasion, the firstborn oak gave the first mother a silver crown and called her grandmother. Soon many of the daughters gave birth too, and the island was filled with the sound of laughter. One winter night, the coldest, darkest and longest night, all the daughters and fairies and animals were snuggled up together with the first mother, keeping one another warm. The moon was hiding, so one of the daughters gave birth to a baby. That baby was totally different to the others that had been born. It wasn't a daughter or even an oak. It was a boy. There was huge excitement about the birth of the first boy on the island, but that was short-lived when everyone realised that this boy wasn't strong or well. The animals all crowded round him, trying to keep him warm with his mother. The fairies sprinkled magic dust over him, and the girls danced and sang magic songs. Despite all this, the baby boy could not get warm, and soon he was too tired even to cry or drink milk from his mother. First mother was so scared for the baby boy. To hide her tears from his mother, she ran out into the forest. The snow was just too deep for her to walk far, so her friend the owl carried her above the snow-filled clouds and up to the clearing where the firstborn oak lived. When they reached the clearing, the first mother gasped, as there was no snow on the ground, and there, in the middle of a perfect circle, lay her friend, the firstborn oak. The tree had fallen and broken into a pile of logs and branches. The first mother rushed to kneel beside the remains of her firstborn oak and cried frosty tears of grief. While she was trying to understand what had happened, a wolf entered the circle. First, the wolf kissed the first mother's tears dry, and then whispered a secret into her ear. She nodded, and with the help of the wolf and the owl, gathered some of the branches from the firstborn oak and carried them back to her daughter and the baby boy. Using the gifts from the firstborn oak and secrets from the wolf, the first mother built the very first fire that had been seen on the island. The fairies were shocked, as they had never seen anything dance like that without wings. The animals laughed, as they'd never seen colours so bright except on spring flowers. The daughters didn't know what to do, as they'd never felt anything as warm as the summer sand on the beach, especially in the middle of winter. The first mother brought the baby boy as close as she could to the edge of the fire. He opened his eyes, giggled, wiggled his fingers and toes, and when he was warm enough, his mother came to him and he drank her milk. It was soon clear to everyone that the baby boy would be safe and well now, so they laughed, danced and sang and gave gifts to the fire. The baby boy grew up to be happy and strong because of the gift of the firstborn oak. He had many sons of his own and taught them all to plant acorns on the 13th dark moon of the year, so there would always be many, many oak trees. Every winter, on the coldest and longest night of the year, all the people who lived on the island lit a very special fire. They brought in a special tree and honoured it with shiny ornaments and fairy dust. They picked one very special branch, sang their favourite songs as they decorated it. Then they would give this log to the fire as a present, and the story of the firstborn oak would be told to the children. So on the longest night of the year, Yule, when you light a candle or build a fire, remember the story of the first mother and the wolf who told her the secret. No matter how dark and cold it seems, the sun will always be reborn and bring us warmth and light. Now, the traditions that come from that story are obviously the Yule log and the Christmas tree. The Christmas tree symbolises the firstborn oak, and the Yule log being burnt on the fire with gifts, remembering the warmth of the first fire that saved that baby boy. A lot of you will know that I'm really interested in Norse myths and legends. I shall hopefully cover those in a second live, if anybody's interested. But now I'm going to move to Iceland. Some of the more interesting Yule stories come from Iceland. In fact, there's a whole pantheon of monsters and mountain-dwelling creatures who come into town to scare miscreant children into behaving. The 17th century saw the appearance of the poem of Grýla. Grýla is mentioned earlier in the Prose of Edda, but not in connection with Christmas. The Prose of Edda is a book that was written down in the early medieval times, and within that is all the myths and legends of the creation of Iceland and all their gods and goddesses and monsters and creatures. Grýla and her third husband, Lepalaudi, live in a cave in the Durmaborga lava fields with their 13 sons, the Yule lads, and a gigantic Yule cat that it sounds like is trying to get in the room at the moment because I've shut the door. Lepalaudi is lazy and rarely leaves their cave. But on Christmas Eve, Grýla comes down from her mountain cave and finds the houses of children who've been naughty throughout the year. She tries to persuade the parents to give her their naughty children. Most parents are on their guard and so give her food, and chase her away. The unfortunate children have been put to bed for being disobedient and vulnerable as they are away from their parents. Grýla snatches these children, carries them home in her enormous sack and devours them. Her favourite meal is apparently stew made from naughty children, for which she has an insatiable appetite. Today, even now, people in Iceland tell this story and try to persuade their children to be good, a bit like being on the good list for Santa. And it's said that she was responsible for the eruption of the Yule volcano in 2010. Apologies if my pronunciation isn't anywhere close. So I said the Yule cat, who's also known as Yule Kotarin, lives with Gröla and her family and is a huge and vicious beast. For those of you who know my cats, I imagine him as a larger version of Bronwyn. Over Yule, the Yule cat prowls around the countryside looking for people who've not been given new clothes to wear for Christmas Eve. If you worked hard, you would be given warm winter clothes, but if not, the cat would get you. Here's a poem written by Johannes Kutlum telling the whole story. This was written down in the 18th century, so quite recently. You all know the Yule cat, and that cat was huge indeed. People didn't know where he came from or where he went. He opened his glaring eyes wide, the two of them glowing bright. It took a really brave man to look straight into them. His whiskers, sharp as bristles, his back arched up high, and the claws of his hairy paws were a terrible sight. He gave a wave of his strong tail. He jumped and he clawed and he hissed. Sometimes up in the valley, sometimes down by the shore, he roamed at large, hungry and evil in the freezing Yule snow. In every home people shudder at his name. If one heard a pitiful meow, something evil would happen soon. Everybody knew he hunted men, but didn't care for mice. He picked on the very poor that no new garments got for Yule, who toiled and lived in dire need. From them he took in one fell swoop their whole Yule dinner, always eating it himself if he possibly could. Hence it was that the women at their spinning wheels sat, spinning a colourful thread for a frock or a little sock. Because you mustn't let the cat get hold of the little children. They had to get something new to wear from the grown-ups each year. And when the lights come on Yule Eve, and the cat peered in, the little children stood rosy and proud, all dressed up in their new clothes. Some had gotten an apron, and some had gotten shoes, or something that was needed. That was all it took. For all who got something new to wear stayed out of that pussycat's grasp. He then gave an awful hiss, but went on his way. Whether he still exists, I do not know, but his visit would be in vain. If next time everybody got something new to wear, now you might be thinking of helping where help is needed most. Perhaps you'll find some children that have nothing at all. Perhaps searching for those that live in a lightless world will give you a happy day and a merry, merry Yule. Now apparently the Yule cat makes an appearance in the new Netflix movie, The Christmas Chronicles 2, where he's depicted as a lynx or a bobcat and named Yule. I have 2 Yule cats in here at the moment, and if you hear hissing, it's my cats, not the Yule cat. The Yule lads, the Julesveina, deserve a night all to themselves. As I've said, there are 13 of them, and they're all sons of Grilla and Lepelud, and they're all pranksters. Each of them has their favourite prank, but on the whole, they come down to town, one by one, on the run up to Yule, and leave presents in shoes that the children have left on their windowsills. If the child has been disobedient, they receive a potato in lieu of gift. This non-gift has been translated into a lump of coal in modern days. So Icelandic tales are very rich. They still believe in a lot of fairies. In fact, recently there was a case of a road that had to be diverted around a rock that was believed to be where fairies lived. So the beliefs are strong, and you don't want to be annoying the little people in Iceland, because they really do believe that you will get your comeuppance. And fairies, unlike the Victorian vision of fairies, are tricksters. They tend to be naughty, a bit like the pixies in Harry Potter, where they're into mischief and trying to destroy things and make things go wrong. So a lot of you know that I'm pagan, so Yule is my special day, the 21st of December. And that all comes from the belief that the longest night, you shouldn't despair, that the sun will rise again, and things get warmer, and then things grow. And then the natural cycle of things, we go through midsummer, and at midsummer it changes again, and the nights get longer and the days shorter. In fact, I've been to Stonehenge on the winter solstice. For some reason, it's become tradition for modern pagans to visit on the summer solstice, but Stonehenge and a lot of the Neolithic and megalithic monuments were actually winter solstice monuments, so they're aligned to the rising sun on the winter solstice, the morning after, so the 22nd, after the longest night. And it's a beacon of hope. It's that point of things do get better. You can imagine in a time when you lived from hand to mouth, and everything that you ate, you had to grow and produce yourself. So over winter, there wasn't much growing. You had to lay down stocks. You'd fatten your best animal to keep you going in meat through the year, through the winter. And the winters were hard, they were cold, there was no electricity, very, very little natural light. So you can imagine the worry about the sun not returning was a real worry, because you'd think, well, are things going to get better? Are things ever going to grow again with a night that's endless? And the symbolism of that, the longest day and the longest night, and the turning of the wheel, is personified in the story of the Oak King and the Holly King. So I've got my version of the story written down here. Long ago, our land was ruled by two kings who were brothers. The younger brother wore oak leaves as a crown and was known as the Oak King. The older brother wore holly leaves as a crown and was known as the Holly King. The brothers felt they knew best how to rule the land, and they quarrelled over it all the time. The Oak King wanted the land to be bright and hot and sunny for the entire year, and the Holly King wanted the land to be dark and cold and sleeping the entire year. Both kings loved a beautiful lady, and she loved them both. She hated to watch them fight. She told them to share the land between them, one half of the year for the Oak King and one half for the Holly King. The brothers couldn't be persuaded to stop their fighting. One hot day, when the sun was high in the sky and it seemed night would never come, the Holly King drew his sword against his brother and they fought. Although the Oak King fought bravely, the Holly King struck a mortal blow and the Oak King fell. "My brother," cried the Holly King, holding the bleeding body of the Oak King in his arms. The lady bundled up the body of the Oak King and told the Holly King that he must rule the land, and she took the Oak King away. Each day, the hours the sun shone grew shorter. Each night, the moon rode the sky for a little bit longer. The days grew shorter and cooler, the nights longer and colder. Snow started to fly. The Holly King could think nothing but his brother. Finally, the land was bare and dead, and all the plants slept. Many animals slept through the cold times, and those that didn't sleep had a hard time finding food and shelter. One night, when it seemed the sun would never rise again, the lady came to the Holly King and said, "Don't despair, your brother isn't dead. Here he is to take his turn at ruling." And there stood the Oak King, young again and healthy, and the Holly King happily stepped aside for his brother to take his place as king of the land. The days grew longer and warmer. The moon rode in the sky for less time. The land grew green again, and the plants and animals awoke. Each year the cycle continued, one brother ruling the green time and one the dark time. And that's another big belief in the pagan religion, is the light and the dark. And there has to be light and dark and a balance between the two. Okay, so I'm going to quickly look at the comments now to see if there's any questions. I hope you enjoyed the stories. Apologies for reading. I can't I can't remember all of them. Oh, thanks, Penny. Yeah, the fire's really warm, hence why I'm wearing a t-shirt. Yeah, it's it seemed like the ideal place to read stories about Yule and festive stories. So, has anybody got any questions? Otherwise, it's going to be a short live. No. Your bedtime story, Barbara. I didn't want to go into the ones that people knew really well. I wanted to do something a little different. So I'm planning next time to do some Norse stories. So stories of Odin and Freya. Freya being the mother. So parallel to the first mother, the Gaia. Oh, night, Alex. Thanks for dropping in. And the Anglo-Saxon Norse stories tend to be very close to how the Germans and the Danes and the Scandinavians still celebrate Yule. Christmas Eve is their big time of year. So unless there's any questions, thank you to everybody who's listened, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you again probably the same time next week if everybody's okay with that. And I shall tell some more tales, some Scandinavian Viking type tales. So get your mead and your hot chocolate, get your hug on, and I shall see you again next week.